What if all power goes out worldwide? Do you find it unpleasant when it's dark? Have you ever watched the big game on the television that is mounted on your refrigerator? When you consider that you can carry all the luxuries of modern existence in your pockets or access them at the touch of a button, you have to wonder, what would happen if the electricity went out on Earth for a week? Have you ever attempted to communicate with other people in the world? How much would it set you back to get the electricity back on? Would there be no form of law whatsoever? In 2019, a catastrophic power outage wreaked havoc on Venezuela, rendering the South American nation a desolate wasteland. At gunpoint, armed biker gangs patrolled the streets and threatened the residents they encountered. Hospitals were left without power, and once they were robbed, grocery stores were left empty. But what would happen if there was a sudden global blackout that lasted for a whole week? Would the collapse of our global infrastructure affect us as well? The Energy Information Administration of the United States estimates that humanity utilized around 575 quadrillion BTUs of energy in the year 2015. There are around 7.3 billion people living on Earth, which means that this amount of energy is sufficient to provide each of us with 78 million BTUs. If a geomagnetic storm were to sweep across our entire planet, there is no question that there would be a significant disruption to the conventions of society. All of our communication systems would be rendered inoperable if this phenomenon, known as a black sky hazard, were to take place. Electromagnetic energy would be propelled toward the planet at the speed of light as a result of the storm, which was created by coronal mass ejection being expelled from the sun. The agitated particles in the upper atmosphere would cause interference with the radio signals that satellites use. You would be unable to communicate with your friends and family members who live in more remote locations. Even if the battery on your mobile device is completely charged, if you are not connected to a network, you are simply holding a paperweight. Therefore, at first, you probably won't even know that the outage is affecting users all over the world, because there wouldn't be any modern devices to distract you. And because you'd have a clear view of the night sky, you might even find that the first night is enjoyable. However, there would be a price to pay. In the 30 minutes that followed the first strike, a surge of electrons and protons would arrive, wreaking havoc on the electronic circuitry of satellites. This lethal amount of radiation could also pose a concern to astronauts in space or passengers in aircraft flying at high altitudes. In order to steer their paths, many of our satellites require the assistance of spaceflight operators on Earth. If there is no one under control, satellites have a chance of colliding with other space debris or with each other. In the meantime, back on Earth, hospitals may be at risk of experiencing disastrous impacts due to power loss. It is possible that the energy currents produced by a geomagnetic storm could influence electrical lines to operate in a way that is unstable for the grid. This enormous surge has the potential to wreck transformers all around the planet. Even the finest backup generators can only supply power for around 24 hours at a time. As a result, intensive care units located all across the world would face catastrophic losses. It was impossible for the ventilators to work, and in order to keep patients alive, medical personnel would have to resort to manually operated devices such as rubber lungs. People who require dialysis would not receive it, and physicians would be forced to make difficult decisions regarding the lives of their patients. In addition, electricity plants all around the world would stop functioning. It may take many days or even several weeks to get them back up to full capacity, regardless of whether they are powered by coal, natural gas, or nuclear fission. The cooling systems of the nuclear reactors would fail, which would result in the complete melting down of the nuclear fuel. It may take several weeks to repair Europe's huge power infrastructure, which is interconnected and distributes electricity to over 24 nations and more than 400 million people. In addition, none of these estimates take into account the cost in dollars, presuming that we will continue to make use of monetary units until the electricity is restored. The United States Department of Energy calculated that the cost to the economy was around $2.5 billion. When 2 million consumers in California were without electricity for 2 days, the Department of Energy of the United States estimates that $20,000 to $500,000 might be lost by 33% of American enterprises. If the banks were to close their doors, you would be unable to access the money that is currently in your accounts. We can only hope that you did not empty your pig's bank completely. However, retailers only have a certain quantity of each item in stock. And in the absence of electronic cash registers and payment systems, things have the potential to deteriorate rapidly. It is possible that the people will become agitated and grab these necessary commodities by force if it is the only way for them to ensure the survival of their family. If there is total anarchy in the streets, would it be possible for you to flee to the woods? You won't be able to travel very far if the gas tank in your automobile isn't completely filled. There would be a failure in the operation of the gas pumps. In the event that traffic signals stopped functioning, driving may be like being in a demolition derby. The transportation industry around the world would be rendered useless, rendering it impossible to supply essential goods. And depending on where you live, there are other things that, in addition to the shortages of supplies, can cause you concern. It's a sudden halt in the provision of services. Your calls were not being accepted by the emergency services. People who were trapped in elevators were unable to contact for assistance. In addition, if there were no furnaces to supply heat, persons living in colder places would have to rely on the warmth provided by the burning of wood or a close embrace to stay warm. In addition, the pumps that are housed within the water towers would not function in the absence of power. There would be catastrophic water shortages in a great number of regions, because there is a finite amount of water remaining in the tanks after distribution. You will need to carefully save the water that you consume. Each glass of water would reduce the amount that we have available. Because the electric sewage systems were incapable of pumping away waste, each flush had the potential to wreak havoc on your plumbing system. It's possible that this will lead to an overflow of waste, which will then back up into your home. And that's not even the worst thing that's going to stink. On day 2, the perishable products in your refrigerator will begin to lose their freshness and eventually go back. And if there weren't regular pickups of rubbish, these putrid things would just build up in the streets. Because of the dependence of so many of our services on electricity, a geomagnetic storm wouldn't just leave us bored if we didn't have access to social media. It has the potential to leave us unkempt, famished, and destitute. And even though the thought of this happening would be inconceivable to you, the World Bank estimates that there are 1 billion people living without access to energy. The situation is made even worse by the fact that hundreds of millions of people are forced to make do with unreliable or expensive electricity sources, effectively leaving several emerging nations in the dark. In order to circumvent this problem, a number of knowledgeable individuals are striving to develop artificial intelligence that is capable of predicting when power shortages would occur. In addition, there is a significant amount of study that needs to be done in order to determine how to make renewable energy sources more dependable for widespread use. But perhaps you've decided that you've had enough of this modern nightmare and that you want to live your life completely disconnected from the rest of society. And that's it. This was our point of view. But what do you think would happen if the power goes out worldwide? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure to hit the bell so that you don't miss future uploads.